Erased from my family for my golden brother. Now they beg me to save them after he ruined everything. Imagine discovering that your own family has literally erased you from existence. I remember the exact moment my world shattered. Rain hammered against the windows as I searched through Dad's office for my college transcripts. That's when I found it. Tucked between tax folders and dusty photo albums, our family's ancestry book. My heart raced as I opened it. My fingers traced the elegant family tree spanning generations. Great-grandparents, grandparents, my parents, and then just one child. My brother, Ethan. Where my name should have been was just a black ink mark, a deliberate erasure, as if I had never existed. In that moment, I wasn't just hurt, I was shattered. 23 years of loving a family who had literally written me out of existence. I'd always known Ethan was their golden child, the perfect son who could do no wrong, the star whose accomplishments were celebrated with lavish parties while mine earned polite nods and quick subject changes. But this was different. This was intentional. This is my story. How I discovered I'd been erased from my family's history. How I rebuilt my life from nothing. And what happened when their perfect golden child crashed and burned, leaving them desperate for the daughter they'd tried to erase. What would you do if your family deliberately erased your very existence to favor someone else? Growing up, our house was the Ethan show. My brother was the star, and I wasn't even worthy of a supporting role. Ethan got straight A's again. Harvard material for sure, Dad would announce at family gatherings, chest puffed with pride. When I brought home identical grades, Mom would pat my shoulder without looking up from her phone. That's nice, honey. Did you know Ethan made quarterback this season? The favoritism wasn't subtle. It was written in dollar signs and opportunities. For his 16th birthday, Ethan unwrapped keys to a brand new Jeep. I can still see his face lighting up as Dad clapped him on the shoulder saying, "Only the best for my boy." 6 months later, on my 16th birthday, I got driving privileges on Mom's old sedan, but only when she didn't need it. "Be grateful," she said when she saw my disappointment. "Some kids don't get to drive at all." When college applications came around, they drained their savings and took out second mortgages to send Ethan to an Ivy League school. "He's going to be something special," Dad would say, his voice reverent. Meanwhile, I was told to apply for scholarships and consider community college because it's the financially responsible choice. The same parents who spared no expense for my brother suddenly became frugal when it came to me. I told myself it was normal, that maybe boys just needed more investment than girls, that maybe I was being oversensitive. I became the family peacekeeper, the responsible daughter who helped with dishes while Ethan relaxed after dinner because he works so hard. But deep down, each unequal treatment carved another piece from my heart. Thousands of tiny wounds that never had time to heal before the next cut came. It wasn't that I wanted what Ethan had. I just wanted to matter equally. The summer after college graduation, I landed a decent entry-level job and was saving for my first apartment. I just needed my transcripts for HR, which is why I was digging through Dad's meticulous filing system that rainy afternoon. The ancestry book caught my eye, bound in worn leather, with the Williams family legacy embossed in fading gold letters. Our family had always been proud of tracing our lineage back to the American Revolution. This book was updated with each generation, births, marriages, notable achievements. My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages to our generation. I saw my parents' wedding date, Ethan's birth, and then nothing. No mention of me. Just a small black mark where my name should have been, like an error that had been deliberately corrected. My hands shook so badly I could barely turn the pages. Was this a mistake? An oversight? But as I kept looking, I found something else. Tucked between the pages was a legal document. My father's updated will. I shouldn't have read it, but something compelled me to scan the contents. It was all there in black and white. The family home, the vacation property, the investments, the family business. Everything was designated to go to Ethan. Everything. My name appeared only once, with a modest sum set aside. Essentially, a consolation prize. What broke me wasn't the money. It was the clause that stated, "As per family tradition, the Williams family business and properties shall pass to the firstborn son, Ethan, who will continue the family legacy as the sole heir." Sole heir. As if I didn't exist. As if I wasn't their daughter, their flesh and blood. I confronted them that night at dinner. The rain lashed against the windows as I placed the ancestry book on the table between us, my finger pointing to the black mark where my name should be. "Why am I not in here?" I asked, my voice unnaturally calm. The silence stretched like a rubber band about to snap. Mom stared at her plate. Ethan looked confused, genuinely confused, which somehow made it worse. But Dad looked resigned, as if he'd been expecting this confrontation for years. "It's just tradition, sweetheart," he finally said, reaching for his wine glass. "The Williams name and legacy pass through the male line. It's nothing personal." Nothing personal? The words felt like acid in my mouth. "You literally erased me from our family history." Mom jumped in then, her voice sugar-sweet in that way that had always made me doubt my own feelings. "Lauren, honey, we love you just as much as Ethan. But the family business, the properties, they've always gone to the sons. It's been this way for generations." I turned to Ethan, my brother, who I'd helped with homework, who I'd covered for when he broke curfew, who I'd always supported, even when his success cast me in shadow. "Did you know about this?" I demanded. He shrugged, uncomfortable, but not shocked. "Kind of. Dad mentioned it a few times." That's when the last thread of denial snapped. This wasn't an oversight. This wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. My family had consciously decided I was less valuable because I was a daughter, not a son. In that moment, everything became crystal clear. 23 years of being second best suddenly made perfect sense. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't beg them to see my worth. Instead, I did something I'd never done before. I put myself first. I packed 2 suitcases with essentials, clothes, documents, my laptop, a few photos, none including my family. I withdrew my entire savings, money I'd earned working part-time through college, money they couldn't touch. On my bed, I left a note. "When you're ready to see me as an equal member of this family, you know how to reach me. Until then, I'll be writing my own legacy." I left at dawn, while the house was still quiet. No tearful goodbyes. No dramatic confrontations. Just the soft click of the front door as I walked away from the only home I'd ever known. Some might call it running away. I call it the first step toward finding myself. Those first months tested everything I thought I knew about myself. My entry-level salary barely covered a tiny studio apartment with questionable plumbing. I ate ramen more nights than not. I worked overtime whenever it was offered. Weekends were for side gigs, anything to build financial security. There were nights when I stared at my phone, my mother's number highlighted, my finger hovering over the call button. Nights when doubts crept in like fog. Was I overreacting? Was family tradition worth throwing away my relationship with my parents? But then I'd remember that black mark in the ancestry book, the deliberate erasure of my existence, and my resolve would harden again. No one called for the first 3 months. No texts, no emails. Not my mother with her guilt trips. Not my father with his logical explanations. Not even Ethan with his confused loyalty. It was as if I'd never existed, exactly as their ancestry book suggested. What my family never understood was that I'd always been the resilient one. While Ethan had everything handed to him, I'd learned to work twice as hard for half the recognition. That turned out to be my superpower. I approached my career with a ferocity that surprised even me. When my colleagues went home at 5, I stayed until 7. When they complained about difficult projects, I volunteered for them. I took online courses at night to expand my skill set. I networked at every industry event, even when my social anxiety screamed at me to stay home. My tiny apartment slowly became a home. I found a secondhand bookshelf and filled it with business books. I pinned my goals to the wall, concrete steps to build the life I wanted. And at the center of my vision board was a simple note: create a legacy they can't erase. A year passed, then two. I changed jobs twice, each time for a significant pay increase. I moved to a safer neighborhood, a slightly larger apartment. I started building an emergency fund, then investments of my own. I made new friends, real friends who valued me for exactly who I was. I even started dating someone who looked at me like I hung the moon, not like I was perpetually standing in someone else's shadow. For the first time in my life, I wasn't being compared to anyone. I was just me, and that was enough. I wish I could say I never checked on my family during those years, but that would be a lie. I occasionally looked at their social media. Ethan graduated and joined Dad's company as VP. Mom posted about family dinners I wasn't invited to. They took the same vacation to the lake house every summer, their photos showing no empty space where I should have been. They had adjusted to my absence as easily as they had adjusted to my presence, which is to say, barely at all, until everything fell apart. It was an ordinary Tuesday when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. Spam calls were common, but something made me pick up. "Lauren, it's Mom." 3 years of silence, and that's all she said. As if we'd spoken yesterday. As if I hadn't walked away from their lives. As if she hadn't let me go without a fight. I said nothing, waiting. "We need to talk," she continued, her voice strained in a way I'd rarely heard. "It's about the family business, and Ethan." I agreed to meet her, not at our family home, but at a coffee shop downtown. Neutral territory. When I arrived, I almost didn't recognize her. My mother, always impeccably put together, looked worn. Her designer clothes had been replaced with something off the rack. Her perfectly highlighted hair showed gray roots. "Thank you for coming," she said, her eyes taking in my appearance, the confident posture, the professional attire, the calm expression I'd practiced in the mirror 100 times before walking in. "What's going on?" I asked, not bothering with pleasantries. She twisted her wedding ring, a nervous habit I'd forgotten about. "The business is failing, Ethan. He made some decisions without consulting your father, bad investments, a merger that went wrong." She paused, swallowing hard. "We're losing everything." A strange feeling washed over me. Not satisfaction exactly, but something like vindication. "That's unfortunate," I said carefully, "but I don't see how it involves me." "Lauren, please." She leaned forward, desperation cracking her perfect facade. "Your father is too proud to ask, but we need help. You always had a good head for business, better than Ethan, though we never said it. We need your expertise, your connections." Oh, I studied her face, looking for manipulation, for the guilt trips that had worked so well in the past, but all I saw was raw desperation. "Where's Ethan now?" I asked. "In Europe," she admitted, looking away. "He left when things started falling apart, said he needed space to think." Of course he did. Golden Boy ran when things got tough, while they came crawling to the daughter they'd erased. "And Dad? Where is he?" "At home, he's not well. The stress has affected his health." I nodded slowly, taking a sip of my coffee to hide the conflicting emotions raging inside me. Part of me wanted to walk away, to let them face the consequences of placing all their bets on Ethan. But another part, the part that had spent years becoming stronger, becoming whole, knew I didn't need their downfall to prove my worth. "I have one condition," I said finally. "I want to see the ancestry book." My childhood home looked smaller than I remembered. The imposing colonial that had once seemed like a mansion now appeared worn, with peeling paint and untended gardens. Inside, the furniture was the same, but there was a staleness to the air, as if the windows hadn't been opened in months. Dad sat in his armchair, a blanket over his legs despite the warm day. He'd aged a decade in 3 years. The confident, sometimes overbearing man who had dominated my childhood looked diminished, hollowed out. When he saw me, his eyes widened. "Lauren," he whispered, and for a moment I thought I saw tears. But William Bennett didn't cry. He'd taught both Ethan and me that Bennetts didn't show weakness. "Hello, Dad," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Mom said you wanted to see me." "You look successful," he said, and I couldn't tell if that was pride or resentment in his voice. "I am." No elaboration, no need to justify my existence anymore. Mom hovered nearby, clearly anxious. "I'll get the book," she said, disappearing into Dad's office. The silence between us hung heavy with 3 years of unspoken words. 3 years of holidays, birthdays, ordinary Sundays, all spent apart. I'd built a life without them, and somehow, seeing my father now reinforced that I'd made the right choice. Mom returned with the leather-bound ancestry book. It looked exactly the same, perhaps with a bit more dust on the cover. She handed it to me without meeting my eyes. I opened it slowly, turning to the page I'd memorized. Our family's recent history. And there it was, still just Ethan's name after my parents. The black mark where my name should have been remained. 3 years, I said quietly, and you still couldn't acknowledge my existence. Dad shifted uncomfortably. "The book follows tradition." "No," I cut him off, my voice firm but not angry. "The book follows choices, your choices." I pulled something from my bag, a document folder with my company's logo embossed on the front. "This is my condition for helping you. Inside is an analysis of your company's financial situation based on publicly available information. I've outlined a restructuring plan that might save what's left of the business. My team is prepared to step in immediately." Mom reached for the folder eagerly, but I held it back. "There's also a new page for the ancestry book. One that includes me, my birth, my education, my achievements, including the company I've built that's now in a position to save yours." Dad's jaw tightened. The old pride flickered in his eyes, warring with desperation. "This isn't about money," I continued. "It's about recognition, acknowledgement. I don't want your legacy, Dad. I've built my own, but I refuse to be erased any longer." The silence stretched between us, taut as a wire. Finally, Dad nodded. A small movement, but in it was the surrender of generations of tradition, the admission that he had been wrong. "Your name should never have been removed," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I was following what my father did and his father before him. I never questioned it." "Well," I said, placing the folder on the coffee table, "it's time to question it now." I'd like to say that moment fixed everything, that we fell into a tearful group hug and all was forgiven. But real life isn't a Hallmark movie. Real healing takes time, awkward conversations, and uncomfortable truths. Over the next 6 months, I worked with my father to salvage what remained of the Bennett family business. Not from the family home, but from my downtown office with clear boundaries and professional distance. I didn't take over. That wasn't my goal. Instead, I guided, advised, and connected them with the right people to rebuild. Ethan eventually returned from Europe, tan and apologetic. He expected to slide back into his role as heir apparent, but found the dynamic had shifted. For the first time, our parents saw him clearly, not as the golden child who could do no wrong, but as a man who had made serious mistakes and then run from them. "I never asked to be the favorite," he told me once over coffee in my office, "and I never asked to be erased," I responded. "But here we are." His face flushed with shame, and I realized he'd never fully understood what they had done to me. what he had been complicit in. The golden child had been just as trapped by their expectations as I had been marginalized by them. Slowly, awkwardly, we began building something new. Not the blind adoration of his childhood or the bitter resentment of my early adulthood, but something approaching mutual respect. The ancestry book now sits in my father's office with a new page, one that lists both Ethan and me, with our birth dates, education, and achievements. It's a small thing, symbolic really, but symbols matter. Being written into your family's history matters. My parents have changed too. Age and near financial ruin humbled them in ways I never expected. Mom calls weekly now, asking about my life with genuine interest. Dad consults me on business decisions, valuing my expertise in a way he never did before. The irony isn't lost on me. They spent years grooming Ethan to continue their legacy, only to have me save it in the end. But I didn't do it for revenge or even validation. I did it because I finally understood something important. I didn't need to destroy their legacy to build my own. The two could exist side by side, different but equally valuable. 5 years have passed since I found that black mark in the ancestry book. 5 years of building, healing, and redefining what family means to me. I run my own consulting firm now, specializing in family business transitions. I help other families navigate the complex waters of legacy, inheritance, and equality. Sometimes I see myself in the daughters and younger sons who sit quietly while their parents discuss succession plans that exclude them. I make sure their voices are heard. My relationship with my family isn't perfect. There are still moments when old patterns emerge, when Mom automatically turns to Ethan first at family gatherings, or when Dad slips and refers to the business as Ethan's future, but now I speak up, and surprisingly, they listen. Ethan has found his own path too, not in the family business, but in education, where his charisma serves him well. He's expecting his first child soon, a daughter. He's already promised me that she'll know her worth isn't determined by her gender. As for the family business, it's healthier than ever, with a leadership team that includes both family and non-family members. I sit on the board but maintain my separate identity and career. The succession plan now focuses on merit, not birth order or gender. Sometimes I think about that rainy afternoon when I found the ancestry book. How one moment of painful truth changed the trajectory of my life. If I had never seen that black mark, would I have continued to accept my second-place position in the family? Would I have ever built the confidence and career I have now? Would my parents ever have seen me, really seen me, for who I am? I keep a small notebook on my desk. It's nothing special, just a simple leather journal, but inside, I've started my own legacy book. Not one based on who was born first or who carries the family name, but one that celebrates achievement, kindness, and courage. It has plenty of room for future generations, nieces, nephews, perhaps my own children someday, regardless of their gender or birth order. Because that's the thing about legacies, they're not set in stone. They're not determined by centuries of tradition or even by what's written in fancy ancestry books. They're created by the choices we make every day, by the values we uphold, by the way we treat those we claim to love. My family tried to erase me. Instead, they forced me to write my own story, one that turned out to be far more powerful than the one they had planned. What about you? Has your family tried to write your story for you? Maybe it's time to pick up the pen yourself. Remember, the most beautiful legacies aren't inherited. They're built, one choice at a time.